Good evening and welcome to Boring Stories to Fall Asleep. Tonight, we'll take a very slow, very quiet walk through a snow-dusted village market on a cold morning in a time long past. There is no list to follow. No errands to run. No one waiting for you to hurry. Just soft footsteps in the snow. The sound of distant chatter. And the warmth of bread baking somewhere nearby. The market is already coming to life slowly. A man is unpacking clay bowls. A woman brushes snow off her bolts of wool. Horses exhale clouds of breath into the pale morning air. But there is no rush here. You are not late. You are simply here walking slowly into the heart of a quiet winter's day. Before we begin, I invite you to get comfortable. Take a breath, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. If you'd like, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are? And where in the world are you listening from tonight? It's comforting to know that we're sharing this quiet moment, even if separated by miles and time zones. Please take a moment to like this video, and follow the channel. That way, whenever you need a quiet companion to help you sleep, you'll know exactly where to find us. Now close your eyes, if you haven't already. There's nothing you need to do. Nowhere you need to be. Just the soft hush of snow and the sound of footsteps as we begin our slow walk through market day. The year is 1352. And you find yourself in a small village tucked deep within the Scottish Lowlands, nestled between two hills where the wind gathers softly in the hollows, and time seems to pause in the frost. The village doesn't have a name on any map you've seen. But it is real. Real in the way quiet things often are. Stone cottages line the slope of the hill like teeth, thatched and weathered, their chimneys trailing smoke that curls and disappears into a sky the color of pewter. The sun has not yet shown its face, but it is morning. The snow came quietly in the night. A light snow. Just enough to cover the ground and mute the sound of footsteps. It clings to the rooftops, settles in the creases of carts, and rests on every wooden beam and iron latch. It hasn't melted yet. It's too cold for that. This part of Scotland is used to the cold. The people are used to it too, in their hands, their bones, their breath. They rise early. They wear heavy cloaks. They walk steadily, without complaint. And today, as with most holy weeks and feast eves, there is a market. You begin at the edge of the village, where the trees thin out and the muddy road turns white. There are no gates. No guards. Just an old stone arch, half covered in moss, and a wooden sign that creaks faintly in the breeze. You pass it slowly. He is a broad man, not tall, not loud, with a body shaped more by routine than intention. His shoulders slope from years of lifting sacks of flour. His hands are red from the cold and powdered white at the knuckles. His eyes are soft, but tired. You step forward slowly. The snow crunches under your boots, soft, muffled. Not enough to sink. Just enough to remind you you're here. The market is ahead. And already, it breathes. You pass the first cottage, its wooden shutters slightly open. Inside, a woman shapes dough by candlelight, her sleeves rolled, her hair tucked. You don't stop. You simply notice. Past her, a child kneels by the stoop, brushing snow from a basket with mittened hands. They do not see you. You do not speak. You are simply passing. The path opens into a wide clearing, the village's market square. In summer, it would be busy. Bustling. But now it is slow. The stalls are simple rough wood frames, canvas canopies pulled taut against the wind. Some are covered in thin cloths, others left bare to the snow. There are crates. Baskets. Sleds. A small fire burns in a clay brazier near the center, not for cooking, but for hands. You notice steam rising from a ladle in a nearby pot. And the scent, faint, but real, of roasted barley and sage. There is no hurry. No pushing crowds. Just a quiet rhythm. Boots on snow. Breath in air. Coins in hand. You pass the first stall, slowly drawn by the smell. Warm bread, sharp with rice, soft with barley, edged with the faintest trace of wood smoke. The baker is already at work. You can tell has already been up for hours. It is still early in the morning. The sun is somewhere behind the clouds, you can feel it, not see it. A low, silvery glow spreads over the snow. But the baker, he started his day while the sky was still black. Inside the stone cottage behind his stall you can see it, Tucked into the row of homes along the square there is a narrow hearth built low to the ground. Not for sitting beside. Not for warmth. This hearth is for heat. For bread. A small wood-fired oven carved into the back wall, its mouth blackened with soot, its stones glowing quietly like the embers of last night's sleep. He began by lighting the fire, feeding it with strips of dried fur and last year's peat. He does not need to think about it anymore. The order. The timing. The feel of the heat. He knows when the stone is ready not by touch, not by color, but by scent. When it smells like hot dust like old earth and clean flame then it is time. The flour is kept in cloth sacks coarse, grayish, patched at the seams. 2 from barley, 1 from rye. He blends them himself. Not by recipe. By memory. Water from the well. Salt from the coast. A little ale, if he has some left from the day before. He stirs slowly with a wooden paddle. No rush. No waste. Just rhythm. This morning, he made 12 loaves. 6 round. 4 oval. 2 small ones in old pots. One has a sprig of rosemary pressed into the top, a luxury. Another is folded over a slice of onion. The rest are plain. Honest bread. Not meant to impress. Meant to last. At the stall, the loaves sit in rows wrapped in linen, laid on a plank rubbed with ash. Beneath the plank, he stores a small chest with coins, a bag of dried flour for dusting and a curved knife with a bone handle, notched and worn. A kettle of hot water rests near his feet, the steam rising slowly, warming his hands between sails. He is alone this morning. His son, too young, still sometimes helps on feast days. His wife bakes with him on St. Bridget's Eve. But today it's just him. That's how he prefers it. He whistles as he works. Not a tune. Not really. Just something soft and regular like breath through teeth. He doesn't look up often. He knows who will come today, who usually buys the fresh loaves, who asks for yesterday's at half price, who pays in coin, who trades for eggs or firewood. He knows all their names. But he doesn't say them aloud. As he brushes flour from the board, his thoughts are not on bread. He wonders if the path to the forest will stay clear this week. He wonders if the pigs will take to the winter mash. He wonders if he'll have enough wood for the next frost. He's not worried, not yet. But the air smells of deeper winter. You walk past him slowly. The scent of warmth, salt, crust, it lingers on your coat. The baker doesn't see you. But you see him. And for a moment, you feel the fire on your skin and the weight of his silence. And then you walk on. His name is Callum MacRae. He has lived all his life in this village. His father was a baker. And his father before him. The oven in his cottage was built by his grandfather's hands and patched by his own. The same stone. The same smoke. The same rhythm, passed down like a prayer. In his world, bread is not a treat. Not sliced. Not spread with jam. It is not chosen. It is not paused over in markets with 50 kinds in rows. Bread is survival. It is what stands between hunger and health. Between quiet strength and winter illness. Between a table full, or not. Callum bakes with barley, because wheat is rare here. The land doesn't grow it well, not this far north. And what little wheat does come into the village, is taxed heavily. Taken for the nobles. Or shipped to England. So he uses what he has: barley, rye, and oat, sometimes ground so coarse it scratches the throat. But his bread holds. It fills the belly. It warms the hands. It brings the villagers back to his stall, day after day, with a nod and a coin and nothing more. In towns like this, centuries ago, bakers like Callum were essential. Not artisans. Not chefs. Just steady, reliable men bound by heat and patience. In some places, they were watched closely by the guilds. The weight of a loaf could not be guessed. It had to be measured. A baker who sold short weight could be punished publicly. There are stories, soft ones, of crooked bakers being shamed. And so they added an extra roll, a 13th bun, a baker's dozen. Not here, in this village, but elsewhere. Still, the fear lingered. And so did the habit. Now, centuries later, we walk into shops. Shelves full. Crusts golden. Crumbs soft. Choices printed in labels. Loaves wrapped in plastic. And most days, We barely think of it. Bread appears. But here in this village, in this cold, every loaf carries the mark of a man who woke before dawn, and fed the fire, and measured by feel, and shaped warmth into something that would last another day. You pass Callum MacRae's stall. He does not see you. But you see him. And somewhere in you something softens. You move on from his stall, but something in you lingers. There was something about him. Not just the bread, though the scent still clings to your sleeves. Something about his stillness. His strength without noise. You find yourself glancing back. Callum MacRae has finished arranging his loaves now. He wipes his hands on his apron. And steps out from behind the stall just for a moment. Not many do that here. Most vendors stay behind their wares. But Callum walks slowly across the snow-packed square. He nods to the cloth seller. Exchanges a word with the woman at the egg cart. Lifts one hand, a low wave to the old man beside the brazier. No one hugs him. No one calls him loudly. But everyone sees him. And something in their eyes softens just slightly when he passes. His snow continues to fall light, steady, as if the sky itself has grown tired. You see Callum again. His paused at the cloth stall, the one with the folded wool, the ribbons, and the low, slow chatter. The seller Mary, her name is Mary, is speaking with a young woman. Behind her, a shawl flutters free in the wind. Without thinking, Callum steps forward. He catches it. Folds it. Smooths it back into place. Mary nods. Thank you, as always. And Callum replies, it remembers the shape of the wind. The young woman beside him is studying a green-grey shawl, a gift for her mother. Callum gives her one of his short, practical assessments. That one's warm. Wind won't go through it. She nods. Buys it. A few more words pass. A small smile. And Callum steps back. But just before he turns away, Mary watches him. Her gaze lingers a beat too long. Not suspicious. Not afraid. But knowing. And when he's out of earshot, she murmurs, almost to herself, almost to no one at all, he's kinder than he was. Then, she ties the coins into her apron and begins folding again. You hear the words, you don't know what they mean. And no one explains. But the thought lingers in the air, like steam rising off stone. Kinder than he was. You watch Callum walk on, steady, quiet. He nods to the fishmonger. Pauses by the brazier. Looks up once at the sky. And for the first time, you wonder not just what time he woke, but what he might dream about. What he remembers. What he forgets. The young woman cradled the shawl in her hands, its texture coarse yet comforting. This was no ordinary garment, it was the culmination of countless hours of labor and tradition. In medieval Scottish villages, producing woolen cloth was a laborious and communal task that involved several hands and many careful steps. Once the sheep were sheared, their fleece had to be washed thoroughly to remove grease and soil. The clean wool was then carded, gently pulled through brushes to align the fibers, or combed to prepare it for spinning. Turning this fiber into yarn was typically done by hand, using drop spindles or, later, spinning wheels, which became more widely used in the 1200s. The coloring of the yarn was also a skilled process, using dyes made from local vegetation. Lichens, for example, could yield rich purples and reds, while a plant called woad gave a bluish tint. Once dyed, the yarn was set onto looms and woven into cloth, with each pass of the weft thread binding it more tightly together. After weaving, the fabric was fulled, a technique of soaking, beating, and drying that made it denser, softer, and more resistant to the cold. The shawl the young woman held bore the essence of this entire process. Its green-gray hue hinted at the natural dyes used, and its tight weave spoke of skilled hands and time-honored techniques. As she considered her purchase, Callum MacRae approached, his presence as steady as ever. He gently lifted the edge of the shawl, inspecting its weave. "A fine piece," he murmured, his voice low. "It'll keep the chill at bay." The young woman smiled, reassured by his words. She handed over her coins, the transaction simple yet significant. As Callum turned to leave, the cloth seller, Mary, watched him with a contemplative gaze. "He's changed," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. You, the silent observer, felt a stir of curiosity. What stories lay hidden behind Callum's quiet demeanor? The market buzzed around you, but your thoughts lingered on the baker with a past. The market has grown fuller. Boots press snow into the packed earth. Gloves cradle coins. Words float in the air like smoke, light, harmless, half forgotten. You see Callum again. He's no longer at the cloth stall. Now, he moves past a cart filled with cabbages and turnips, hands clasped behind his back. He stops briefly to inspect a sack of dried beans, then continues. He doesn't move quickly. He doesn't linger long. And yet, wherever he passes people notice. Near a stall selling beeswax and salted lard, two women stand close together, heads tilted. One wears a red cap. The other, no bonnet, just grey braids coiled like bread loaves behind her ears. He's always alone, that one, the red-capped woman says, not looking up. Millimeter. Never remarried, the other replies, turning a candle in her fingers. They say she left in the night. Took the baby and never looked back. The red cap clicks her tongue. No. It wasn't that way. It was the fire. Remember? The old cottage. Back of the glen. That was years ago. Still. The conversation trails off as they exchange coins and go quiet when Callum's boots crunch nearby. Farther along, by a pot steaming with bone broth, an older man shakes his head. Bakes like a saint, that one. But there's ghosts in him. The woman beside him stirring dried peas into a cloth sack doesn't respond. She just watches Callum pass and says, "We all carry something." You keep walking. Listening. Not chasing the truth, just letting the air speak. At the far edge of the market, where the crowd thins and the wind wraps more closely around cloaks, there is a small stall. It isn't loud. It doesn't shout for attention. Just a low table covered with a wool blanket, and upon it rows of clay jars, linen bundles, and curled bits of dried bark that seem to hum with scent even in the cold air. The man behind the table stands calmly, wrapped in a dyed scarf the color of dry saffron. His hands are weathered, his face browned by sun from other skies. His accent is different, soft, musical, shaped by roads much longer than the ones that connect nearby villages. He has come a long way to reach this snowy square. His journey likely began far east and south of these hills, perhaps through trading posts along the Levant, or winding ports of the southern Mediterranean. The paths he's traveled are old, carved by foot, wheel, and sail. They are the same trails once used by traders, scholars, pilgrims, routes that snake through deserts and overseas, carrying knowledge, silk, and, above all, spices. Laid before him now are treasures in powder and twig, pepper, dark and round, from the tropical coasts of India, cinnamon, curled tightly in delicate layers, likely once harvested from southern groves near Sri Lanka, and ginger root, faintly golden, brought from warmer climates in Asia. There are buds of clove small and sharp like thorns, and perhaps, tucked carefully in a sealed jar, a few threads of saffron, pale as firelight and light as breath. Each spice has a story. Each one came from a plant once living in warmer soil, picked by hand, dried by wind or sun, carried in sacks across ships and rivers, bartered through tongues the villagers here will never hear. In medieval times, these spices were more than flavor. They were believed to carry healing, to warm the body in winter, to calm troubled stomachs, to ease the imbalances that physicians of the time called humors. Cinnamon and ginger were mixed into wine or broth to soothe illness. Pepper was added not just for taste, but for strength. Even the scent of certain spices was thought to guard against airborne sicknesses. Now, in this small Scottish village, they sit quietly in labeled jars, wrapped against the cold. They are rare here, more precious than gold to some, and yet, this merchant offers them gently, without ceremony. When he speaks to those who pass, it is not in sales pitches but in small stories. He tells of where each jar has been, of the people who dried the bark, of the boats that waited in long harbors for safe winds. He names no countries, no empires, just colors, weathers, smells, and so his stall becomes a place not just of buying and selling but of wandering. He does not draw a crowd. He does not expect one. But those who linger leave with more than a pouch of spice, they leave with wonder. Callum stops at this small stall set apart from the others, no sign, no canopy. The seller is a traveler, darker skin, bright scarf, a voice that sings even when he says nothing. "Winter cinnamon," he says, when Callum lifts a jar. From farther south than your boots have been. Callum lifts the lid. Smells. Says nothing. The merchant smiles. This your first time here? Callum raises one eyebrow. Hardly. The merchant tilts his head. Just seems like a man who knows how to start again. Callum pays with 2 coins. The cinnamon is wrapped in wax cloth. He nods, walks on. Behind you, a voice low and gravelly says to no one in particular. They say he was in the war. One of the coastal raids. Another voice, quieter. No. He was in Inverness. Worked the ovens during the siege. He doesn't speak of it. Would you? You turn your head slightly. 2 men. Gloves off. One lighting a pipe. They speak without glancing toward Callum, who is now folding the corners of his breadcloth back at his stall. He changed when he came back, the man says. You remember. Didn't talk for weeks. Not even to the boy. Maybe he saw something, the other replies. Maybe he did something. You pause. Not because you believe them. But because you don't know what to believe. Callum stands now at his table. The loaves are neat. The table is clean. His hands are folded in front of him. He is still. A girl 6, maybe 7 approaches the stall. She reaches up toward a loaf, then pulls her hand back quickly. Callum doesn't scold. He kneels. Tears off a corner of the oldest loaf. Hands it to her with a glance to her mother, not far behind. The girl grins. The mother nods. They walk away. No words. Just bread. And silence. Whatever he was. Whoever he was. He is this, now. As Callum MacRae returns to his stall, the weight of his past lingers, haunted by memories of the wars of Scottish independence. He specifically recalls the siege of Inverness in 1562, where Mary, Queen of Scots, quelled Alexander Gordon's opposition, resulting in a 3-day siege and Gordon's execution for treason. The wars began after Alexander III's death in 1286, leaving Scotland without a clear successor. Edward I of England exploited this instability to assert control, sparking a series of conflicts. Callum vividly remembers the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, a crucial Scottish victory led by Robert the Bruce that significantly strengthened their fight for independence. The prolonged wars left deep scars across Scotland. Castles were destroyed, and families were fractured. Callum's personal experiences during this turbulent era have profoundly shaped him, leading him to find peace in the repetitive act of baking and the comfort of his oven's heat. As he resumes his bread baking, the memories fade, replaced by the comforting routine of his craft. Yet, the whispers of the past remain, a testament to the resilience of those who lived through Scotland's fight for sovereignty. Back at his stall, Callum is quiet. He wipes his hands on the apron tied at his waist. The cloth is faded, patched at the hip, dusted now with snow and flour. A few more loaves remain. Others have been wrapped and traded. He doesn't sit. He doesn't speak. He just folds down the cloth that covered his goods, smooths it flat, and rests his hand, briefly, on the worn wooden edge of the stall. It is warm beneath his palm. Warm from sun, from memory, from repetition. But Callum's mind is not in the square. Not anymore. It drifts backward, to a time before the bread. Before the cottage. Before the quiet. His war had begun when he was barely 20. The year was 1333. A time when King Edward III of England marched north to assert power. A time when Scotland was caught between 2 crowns, its own, and the English claim. Callum didn't join because he wanted to fight. He joined because his father was gone. Because there was no flour that year. Because the bishop's men came with names written on a scroll and said, "You're strong enough. And we need you." He fought for 4 winters. Not every day. Not every week. But across those years. He was not home. He remembers the siege of Inverness, one of many sieges across the Highlands. The cold there was deeper. The kind that gnawed at the bones. They slept in tents made of stitched wool and prayed the wind wouldn't carry fire to the walls. Callum dug trenches, carried stones, sharpened blades. He saw arrows break through sky like splinters of black glass. He saw friends' boys he had grown up with fall into those trenches and never climb back out. There was Dougal, who sang before battle. A carpenter's son who carved a whistle from yew wood and wore it around his neck. It broke in his hand before the final charge. There was Ian, who bled out under a hawthorn tree while Callum tried to pack the wound with strips of his own cloak. There was no time for goodbyes. He didn't feel brave. Just tired. Always tired. And when he finally came home, there was no celebration. No song. No welcome fire, just silence. A village that hadn't asked him to go, and didn't know what to do with him when he returned. He began to bake again. Slowly. Carefully. First for himself. Then for trade. Then for everyone. The bread was heavier that year. The grain was poor. But the work gave him something to hold. Something to shape. Something to burn. He never spoke of the war. Not aloud. But sometimes, when he kneads the dough, he remembers the sound of boots in mud. And when he stokes the fire, he remembers the crack of walls falling beneath siege towers. These are his ghosts. Not spirits. Not haunts. Just memories with weight. Like flour. Like smoke. Like silence. The bread rises again. He dusts the board. Shapes another loaf. One hand. Then the other. Left. Right. Fold. Turn. Just like before. Just like always. The fire in the brazier has burned low. It gives off more smoke now than flame. Still, a few figures stand near at older villages, faces like folded parchment, scarves pulled up to their chins. You drift that way as if pulled by warmth. Or maybe curiosity. Callum is already there. He's not speaking. Just holding his hands to the heat, watching the iron glow in the center. Then, one of the men, his name is Ewan, you think clears his throat. Ewan is the kind of elder who doesn't say much unless there's a storm. He's lived through many. His knees ache when the snow is about to come. His hands twitch when someone lies. He looks at Callum now, not with suspicion, not with fear, but with a familiarity that cuts through years. You came back, Ewan says, voice quiet. Not everyone did. Callum doesn't answer. Not yet. Ewan adjusts his cap. His fingers are stiff. I remember when they called for you. Scroll in hand. Shouted it through the square like it was a festival. Callum's jaw tightens, not visibly. Just a shadow across his cheek. I remember your mother weeping, Ewan adds, voice like splintered wood. And I remember her baking every morning after you left. Bread without salt. Bread without yeast. Just to feel something rise. Callum looks down. At the fire. At the orange glow flickering against snow. Finally, he speaks. I didn't plan to return, he says. Not for a long while. His voice is steady. Deeper than expected. But dry. Ewan nods. That's clear enough. Another silence. Then Ewan shifts. Not away. Toward him. But you did. You came back. And you bake for the same folk who sent you. Callum doesn't reply. The fire pops. A bit of ash lifts into the air like a moth with nowhere to land. I never said thank you, Ewan says. Callum glances sideways. There's no need, he replies. Still, the old man shrugs. I say it now. Another nod. Another crackle. And then nothing more. They both stare at the fire. Neither looking for comfort. Just sharing heat. And breath. And time. Eventually, Callum steps away. Returns to his stall. Refolds his cloth. Checks his bread. As he always does. But something hangs in the air behind him, not smoke. Not cold. A word spoken. A silence answered. The sun never quite came out today. It tried faint behind clouds, behind smoke, behind memory. But now it's gone. The light has changed. Softer. Blah. The kind of light that makes snow glow from within. The market is nearly empty. Just a few voices, low and practical. A cartwheel turning. A pair of boots slushing down the hill. Most stalls are packed. Bread bundled. Beans loaded. Cloth folded. Only Callum's stall remains. He doesn't rush. He stacks his trays. Folds the linen cloth in thirds. Wraps the leftover loaves in waxed wool and places them in a deep canvas bag. He lifts the bag over his shoulder, slow, even. Checks the fire once more. Taps his fingers against the edge of the wood. and walks. You follow. Not close. Not far. Just enough to see the shape of his back against the dusk. The curve of his boots in the fresh snow. The quiet exhale of a man returning not just to a cottage, but to himself. The path home isn't marked. It doesn't need to be. His house is tucked behind a line of hawthorns. Smoke curls faintly from the chimney. The door is old wood. The hinges creak only in strong wind. He doesn't look back. He opens the door, steps inside, and closes it gently, behind him. You stop walking. The snow thickens. The market is gone. There is only stillness now, and cold, and a strange kind of comfort. Whatever his story was, whatever it still is, you were here for a part of it. Not as a voice, not as a hand, just as a witness. That is enough. You turn, and begin your own slow walk back. Through snow, through silence, toward sleep. The snow has begun to fall again. Gently, quietly, as if the sky is exhaling. The market is not still, but slower now. Boots drag. Words soften. People speak as though they're already halfway home in their minds. You pass by Mary's stall, the cloth seller. Her wares are folded neatly in thick stacks, shielded from the wind. A bolt of deep indigo catches the light. Another, a dusty gray with the texture of moss. She hums as she works. A tune you do not know. Low and thin, like a thread pulled too tight. A young woman approaches, perhaps no older than 17. She holds up a shawl, gray with a woven border of blue and silver, delicate but warm. This one, she says, feels like something old. Mary stops humming, looks up, and smiles. That pattern's older than you, girl. Older than me. Maybe older than the frost itself. The girl runs her fingers along the edge. It feels like a story. Mary nods, slow. It is one. And so she begins. Not like a tale. Not like a lesson. But like something remembered. Marjorie Bruce, she says softly, folding the shawl into the girl's hands. King Robert's daughter. The one they called the Queen who never wore a crown. Marjorie was born in the year 1296, in a Scotland not yet hers. Her father, Robert the Bruce, was not yet king. Not yet legend. Just a man caught in the twisting threads of loyalty and war, pressed between England's grip and Scotland's cry. Marjorie's mother died when she was still a girl. And Marjorie was left to grow up in the long shadow of ambition and battle. The girl listens as Mary speaks. You do too. Not with your ears, but with that quiet, inner stillness that stories know how to find. They say, Mary continues, that Marjorie was proud, but gentle. That she read the Psalms in a voice like snow melt. That she was the one to soothe her father's temper, in the years when his sword spoke faster than his tongue. But they were hunted then. The Bruces. Hunted like wolves. When Robert the Bruce was crowned King of Scots in 1306, the English called it rebellion. And they came down with fire. That same year, Marjorie was captured. Not with sword in hand. But simply as a daughter of the crown. She was only 10. And they locked her in a cage. Not a dungeon, Mary says, folding another bolt as she speaks. Was. A wooden cage. Hung from the battlements of Roxburgh Castle. Where birds could see her. Where snow could fall on her head. Where the people could pass beneath and stare. That's what they did to a child. You do not move. The girl listening does not breathe. She stayed there for years. Until her father's victories brought leverage. And eventually, through exchange or mercy or luck, she was freed. But the cage stayed with her. Mary says no more for a moment. The snow begins to fall more steadily now. The girl tucks the folded shawl under her arm. She married later, Mary adds. Walter Stewart, the High Steward of Scotland. They say he loved her. That they lived quietly in Renfrew. She was with child in 1316. And she was riding, not far, not recklessly. But the horse was spooked. And she fell. And not long after, she was gone. But the child survived. And that child was Robert II. the first Stuart king. So they say, Mary finishes, voice low, that the house of Stuart began with a fall. And a birth. And a shawl like this one. The girl presses the cloth to her chest. And does not ask for a different color. The girl is still holding the shawl. Her fingers stroke its edge. And for a moment, the hush between Mary's words feels heavier than the story itself. You're still listening, too. Though the rest of the market moves, its rhythm slows near her stall, as if time itself bends politely around her voice. There's no portrait of her, Mary says. No stone to kneel at. No harp song that carries her name the way it does her father's. But here, people remember. Some say her spirit passed into the first snow that fell after her son was born. Others say she visits the looms of certain women in the hills, those born with the mark on the palm. The weavers who hum without knowing why. And some say she cursed the kings to follow. Not with wrath, but with longing. A man picking over onions at the neighboring stall turns his head, just for a second. But he says nothing. These are not tales to mock. Not in winter. Not in the shadow of frost. It said, Mary continues, that Marjorie's last words weren't prayers or screams, but something simple. Something whispered to the horse, just before the fall. No one agrees on what they were. Some say she said go on, then. Others think she said my son will rise. But the one I believe, Mary says, folding another piece of wool, is this. Remember me kindly. But not loudly. The girl's eyes widen. She said that, she asks. Mary shrugs. She might have. And isn't that almost the same as if she did? The shawl in the girl's arms is simple at first glance. Just gray. Just warm. But the weave, if studied, has a rhythm. A looped edge. A line of blue thread that runs once every 6 inches, then disappears. That pattern, Mary says, is one of hers. Or at least, one they say was hers. Woven for her wedding. Or maybe for the babe she carried. It's called sighing wool. Because it falls around the shoulders just so. It's the only one I fold with 2 hands. You feel, as you listen, the weight of legacy. Not in kings or battles, but in cloth. In the way sorrow moves from generation to generation, not as tragedy, but as texture. There's no crown in this story. No royal procession. No golden seal. Just a girl in a cage. A woman on a horse. And a shawl folded by firelight, again and again, as winter closes in. Some say the snow fell sideways the day she died, Mary says, almost to herself now. Others say the wind was quiet. As if even the sky was listening. The girl still hasn't moved. But something in her has changed. The way she holds the cloth now, it's gentler. Reverent. Like she's holding a story. Not a thing. How much is it? The girl asks, almost whispering. It's been paid for already, Mary replies, folding it again and handing it back. In memory. You watch the girl walk away. She doesn't turn back. But the shawl drapes differently now. As if the story within it has settled into her shoulders. Mary returns to her stall. Hums again. And the story? It doesn't end. It simply waits. For the next cold morning. For the next girl who picks it up and asks. This one feels like something old. Tea happened on a night when the wind curled low to the ground. Not a storm. Not a gale. Just a steady hush, the kind that presses against windows and fills every chimney with song. The moon was hidden behind cloud. The snow came gently, but did not stop. The world outside was white and still. But inside the cottage, the one just beyond the stream bend, with the narrow chimney and sagging lintel, there was light. And motion. And hands. They were women of different ages. Some widows. Some mothers. A few with shawls over their heads, others with hair braided wet and tucked behind ears. They sat in a loose circle around the hearth. The fire burned low, not bright enough to dazzle, not weak enough to fade. The kind of fire that made you forget the snow against the glass. It snapped softly. Let off curls of wood smoke, the scent of peat and dried birch. Ash gathered at the edge in tidy, sloping piles, warm gray against stone. In the center of the room was the shawl. The one they said had been patterned after Marjorie's own. It lay flat on a piece of linen, pinned gently in place with 4 iron nails pushed through river stones to keep it from shifting. One by one, the women worked. Not all at once. Not in hurry. Just one then another then another. Each chose a single thread, the color didn't matter. A stitch. A loop. A line. Some added only 1. Some wove in 5. No names were said. No memories shared aloud. But the room was full of them, the kind of remembering that doesn't need sound. The fire shifted. A log split open in its belly, revealing the orange heart inside. One woman pressed her palms together to warm them. Another breathed into her scarf. A girl, perhaps 12, rested her head on her mother's lap, too tired to stitch. Her breath rose and fell in perfect rhythm with the ticking of the small brass clock near the shuttered window. Outside, the wind pushed against the door. It did not enter. The shawl grew heavier. Not with weight, but with meaning. Thread upon thread stitched in silence. No pattern. No rules. Only presence. When the final hand lifted, the room was still. The hearth hissed gently. A kettle murmured behind it. A candle guttered. The shawl was folded. Carefully. As if it might remember how it was touched. It was not worn that night. Nor sold. Nor spoken of. It was wrapped in soft cloth, tied with simple twine, and placed in a basket with dried lavender and rosemary. And it waited. For the next cold day. For the next girl in the market. The next one who might lift it, press it to her cheek, and say, "This one feels like something old." If you're still with me now. Eyes not yet closed. Breath still gently rising and falling. Know this. You've made it through a long and quiet journey. A slow walk through a snow-dusted village. Past the scent of barley bread and the hush of market stalls. Past the gentle nods of strangers, and the quiet gaze of a man who bakes to keep the ghosts at bay. You've walked behind Callum MacRae. Watched him fold his cloth, feed his fire, remember without speaking. You've listened to whispers of war. And to the sound of boots in the snow. You stood by as an old man finally said what he never could. And you watched Callum walk home, not to escape the past, but to rest within it. You heard the story of a woman from long ago. Marjorie Bruce, the queen who never wore a crown. A daughter. A prisoner. A mother. You heard how she fell. And how her son rose. How women gathered by firelight to honor her, not with monuments, but with thread. Not with songs, but with shawls. Quiet legacy. Woven like sorrow. But softer. All these stories, they are yours now. You didn't chase them. You didn't claim them. You simply walked among them, and that is more than enough. If you're still awake, that's all right. This story has no end that it folds, it hums, it waits. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to fix anything. Or change anything. You don't even need to fall asleep. Just lie here, breathe and rest. The body knows, the mind follows. You might hear the soft crackle of a fire now. You might feel the weight of a wool blanket. Or imagine the distant sound of a market fading into snow. You are safe here, you are not alone. The story will stay with you, not loudly. Just like a slow breath. Like the hush of snow falling on rooftops. Like silence, shared. So let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Let your eyes go heavy. Let the stories carry you now. You've done enough for today. There is nothing left to hold. Let go. And sleep.